Why did everyone look away when she spoke? Riley Matthews could feel the laughter before she heard it. The sound came sharp and cruel across the Fort Bragg training range, the kind of laughter that wasn't just about mockery. It was about hierarchy, about who was allowed to belong and who was. She stood there, a clipboard clutched to her chest like armor, surrounded by soldiers who carried reputations heavier than their rifles. 13 of the Army's finest snipers had taken their turn, and 13 had missed. 4,200 meters, 15-mile crosswind, an impossible shot, the kind of test that separated legends from statistics. Get away from here, you pathetic desk clerk. This range is for real soldiers, not paper pushers. Jake Morrison's voice cracked through the morning like gunfire. SEAL Team 6, 6'2", shaved head glinting in the sun, arms scarred from deployments he never bragged about because he didn't need to. Everyone here respected him or feared him. Riley didn't look up. She just crouched to gather the requisition forms he'd slapped from her hands. The wind caught the papers, scattering them across the concrete. She could hear boots scraping, laughter echoing. Someone muttered, "Look at her hands, she's shaking." They all thought it was fear. It was. General Marcus Reeves, the Iron Wolf himself, stood at the observation deck above, a steel-jawed silhouette against the Carolina sky. 32 years in service, 4 wars, and the kind of authority that made men forget their pride. His voice thundered across the range. Is there a single real sniper in this entire facility? No one answered. The silence was as heavy as the air before a storm. Then Reeves turned away, muttering to his aide. 3 CIA operatives in Syria, 48 hours before they're executed, unless someone hits that shot. Riley kept her head down, methodically stacking the papers. The white of the forms blurred slightly as her vision trembled. The tremor was constant, a pulse she'd learned to live with. "Hey, supply girl," called Derek Hayes from Delta Force, phone already out, grinning. "You're gonna try the shot too. Maybe you can requisition a miracle." She didn't respond, just straightened small, deliberate movements. 5'2", 110 pounds. Uniform too large, sleeves rolled twice. Light brown hair tied in a bun that wasn't quite regulation tight. A few freckles. Eyes green, watchful, unsettlingly calm. A metallic clang interrupted the laughter. Marcus Webb, one of the Rangers, tossing an empty magazine at her feet. "Fetch, little puppy." Riley bent, picked it up, placed it neatly on the table beside her clipboard. Then she looked up. "Permission to attempt the shot, sir." The laughter that followed hit harder than any insult. Someone actually choked on his coffee. Jake Morrison's face turned red from anger, from disbelief, maybe both. That rifle weighs 30 pounds. You couldn't hold a cup of coffee without spilling it. But Riley was already walking toward the firing line. A ripple of disbelief ran through the group. Cameras came out. Derek started recording again. "Oh, this is going viral." From above, Reeves raised a hand. "Let her try." His voice sliced through the noise. "What's the worst that could happen? She misses like everyone else." Jake turned, furious. "Sir, with respect, this is a waste of ammunition. We need real shooters, not." He gestured at her. "Whatever this is." Riley knelt beside the rifle, unbothered by the murmurs. Her movements were slow, ritualistic, practiced. From her pocket, she drew a small white pill bottle, the kind that wasn't standard issue. She popped the cap with one thumb, dry swallowed 2 tablets, and waited. To the men watching, it looked like desperation. To her, it was necessity. Inside those pills was $800 of black budget technology, nerve stabilizers meant for soldiers whose bodies had betrayed them but whose missions hadn't ended. Not painkillers, not courage enhancers, something far stranger, something never meant for public knowledge. The tremor eased but didn't vanish. It shifted rhythm, a steady pulse, a heartbeat. She could work with that. Riley adjusted the rifle's scope without checking the marks. Her hands moved from memory. The tremor became part of her motion, an unconscious metronome. Somewhere nearby, Derek lowered his phone slightly. Something in her posture, the precision, the breathing, didn't fit the image of a supply clerk. Reeves noticed it too. He leaned closer to the glass of the observation deck, eyes narrowing. In 3 decades, he'd seen every kind of shooter, prodigies, naturals, veterans. But this stance, the shoulder alignment, the elbow placement, the half-trigger rest, it was familiar. Too familiar. He just couldn't remember from where. Downrange, the target shimmered in heat haze. 4,200 meters of open air and crosswind between her and the steel plate. Riley closed her left eye. Not because she needed to, but because blood was trickling from a small cut above her brow, the one the clipboard had caused earlier. She whispered something under her breath. 4,216 meters. Crosswind 15.3 from northwest. Temperature dropped 2 degrees in 30 seconds. Barometric pressure falling. Coriolis effect compensation 673 milliseconds. Target window. The spotter beside her froze mid-breath. Those weren't the mutterings of a rookie. Those were calculations, instantaneous, precise, the kind that came only from years of muscle memory and field data. He wanted to say something, but Riley had already begun her breathing cycle. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Jake was still packing, muttering to himself. This is ridiculous. His voice cracked slightly. We're wasting time while our people are being tortured. But his protest was quieter now, the kind of quiet that comes from recognition. 2 years ago, Jake's wife had died in Afghanistan. A sniper, too. Sarah Morrison, one of the few women who'd ever made it through the elite program. He hadn't forgiven himself since. Watching Riley now, small, trembling, determined, twisted something deep inside him. Riley's finger hovered over the trigger. The laughter had stopped. Phones kept recording, but no one smiled anymore. There was something sacred in the air, that fragile stillness before impact. The tremor didn't stop. It integrated. Each microshiver matched the crosswind's oscillation. Her body became an instrument, imperfect but in tune. "This is insane," Derek muttered, but the edge in his voice was fatting. Riley exhaled, half a breath, heartbeat, silence. The rifle thundered. The blast reverberated off the concrete walls, kicking up dust. The recoil pushed into her shoulder like a living thing. 3 seconds. 3 seconds of flight. 3 seconds during which every person on that range forgot to breathe. Then a distant metallic crack. The spotter's voice shattered the silence. Impact dead center, 4216 meters, perfect shot. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the disbelief spread through the room like a shockwave. Phones dropped, bets forgotten, words dissolved into stunned silence. Riley stood slowly. The tremor returned, uncontrolled now. She turned toward them, calm, pale, unreadable. Jake Morrison's lips parted. "That's impossible." His tone wasn't mocking anymore. It was afraid. He stared at her, at the breathing pattern, the micro-timing, the trigger control. His memory caught up to him. "I've seen that before," he whispered. "Helmand Province 18 months ago." Riley met his gaze, voice quiet but clear. "October 23rd, 0200 hours. Your team was pinned down by Taliban fighters, 8 hostiles with RPGs, 3 wounded, no air support. You had 60 seconds before they zeroed your position." Jake froze, the blood drained from his face. "That was you," he said, barely audible. 7 shots, 7 kills, all from over 1,600 meters. They said it was a guardian angel, a ghost. Riley didn't blink. Someone from a unit that didn't officially exist, a unit that got wiped out 3 days later. "Operation Nightfall," she added softly. "Maybe you've heard of it." The name hit like a detonation. Around the range, men who'd fought in shadows went still. Nightfall wasn't just a rumor, it was a ghost story, whispered in bars, classified briefings, hospital wards. 8 elite operators, code-named Ghost Unit. One had survived, supposedly died later from wounds. General Reeves stepped forward, disbelief warring with recognition. Matthews, Riley Matthews, Ghost 7. Riley reached beneath her collar, pulled out a chain. Dog tags, not hers. The metal was worn, the name barely legible. Sarah Morrison, KIA Operation Nightfall. Jake staggered as if struck. No, she wasn't part of Ghost Unit. She was stationed at, his voice broke. She was supposed to be safe. Riley's reply was steady. She volunteered, last-minute replacement. You were never supposed to know. The tags caught the light. Her trembling hand made them shimmer like ghosts. She died in my arms, Riley continued. 3 days after I saved your team. Her last words were about you and the kids. The SEAL commander, the unbreakable man, sank to his knees. The laughter, the arrogance, the command presence gone. Just a broken husband whispering his wife's name. All around them, soldiers stood frozen, unsure what to do with the truth unraveling before them. Reeves exhaled slowly. The report said you died. Riley rolled up her sleeves. The skin beneath was a map of scars, surgical, deliberate. Places where metal had met bone, where tendons had been reattached, where life had been stitched back together by science that didn't officially exist. I did, she said quietly. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. They brought me back. Black Site Medical Facility. 6 months learning to walk again. Learning to shoot again with hands that don't obey. Her voice trembled, not from weakness but from memory. Every shot hurts, like touching fire, but I take them anyway. Reeves stared at the scars, then at her eyes, green, unflinching. He'd seen courage before, but never like this. Then she turned her arm, revealing a tattoo etched into damaged skin, coordinates, names, numbers. Operation Nightfall. KIA. Morrison, S. Hayes, D. Chen, Rodriguez, Park, Williams, Johnson, Mia, Matthews, R. Ghost 772 hours. 43 confirmed. 1 survivor. Derek Hayes stepped closer, eyes wide. Hayes, that's my brother, David Hayes. He told me he was going on routine patrol. That was 2 years ago. Riley nodded. He died covering our retreat, held a bridge for 20 minutes, saved 4 of us. Silence stretched again, heavier now, weighted with ghosts. Then she pulled a tablet from her case, sleek, black, glowing with encrypted data that no supply clerk should possess. General, there's something you need to know about Nightfall, about why it failed. As the screen lit up, the faint hum of its secure system filled the air. Someone changed our insertion coordinates 30 minutes before deployment, she said. Someone inside command. Reeves leaned closer. Who authorized the change? That's what I've been trying to find out, Riley replied. For 18 months. Jake swallowed hard. You're saying someone betrayed Ghost Unit? Riley nodded once. They knew exactly where we'd be. It was an ambush from the start. The wind carried the faint echo of her words, scattering them like ash across the range. And as the truth began to take shape, betrayal, sacrifice, a ghost returned from the dead. The soldiers who'd laughed at her hours earlier stood in silence, watching a trembling woman become something far greater than any of them had ever imagined. She wasn't there for redemption. She was there for justice. And justice had her name carved into its bones. Why was the general suddenly afraid to look at her? The air inside the range control room had shifted, thick, electric, suffocating. Riley's quiet voice had peeled back layers of lies no one had dared to touch for years. And the more she spoke, the more everyone realized what she was about to expose could end careers, maybe even lives. Her fingers danced across the tablet, trembling but deliberate. Lines of code flickered across the screen, encrypted coordinates, communication logs, timestamps. Information that shouldn't exist outside a top clearance vault. Here, she whispered, turning the screen toward General Reeves. Original mission file, Ghost Unit. Insertion point grid 3462. She swiped again, another file appeared, red-stamped and marked confidential. Actual location, 3459. Changed 30 minutes before launch. Not by command, by someone with level 7 clearance. The general's jaw tightened. Who had that kind of access? That's the problem, Riley said softly. It wasn't a person. It was a login signature routed through a ghost network, the kind used by intelligence liaisons between Pentagon and Langley. Reeves's eyes narrowed. Langley. Jake Morrison finally stood again, still pale, still shaking. You're saying the CIA sold you out? Riley didn't answer directly. I'm saying someone used their systems, someone who knew how to hide behind them. The screen filled with another set of files, financial trails, transfers through shell companies, all leading to a single recurring name. W. Blake. Jake froze. Warren Blake. His voice cracked with disbelief. That's my best friend, my best man, Deputy Director of Field Operations. Riley looked up, her expression unreadable. I know. The room seemed to tilt. For the first time, Jake's confident mask slipped entirely. He took a step back like the words had weight. That's impossible. Warren wouldn't. Riley's voice interrupted, steady, resigned. He would, and he did. Reeves's hand clenched at his side. Blake, been feeding us intelligence for years. You're telling me. I'm telling you, Riley said, cutting him off gently. He sent Ghost Unit into an ambush. He made sure we never came back, and he's been covering it ever since. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of fluorescent lights and the wind outside against the metal doors. Then footsteps. 3 sharp knocks echoed from the entryway, followed by the heavy groan of opening steel. The sound of engines idling outside. Boots, suits, authority. Every instinct in the room went on alert. 3 black SUVs sat just beyond the threshold. A man in a dark tailored suit stepped through, his presence commanding in a way that had nothing to do with rank. 2 men followed him, flanking his sides, both armed, both trained. The smell of cologne and arrogance filled the air. General Reeves, the newcomer said smoothly, heard there was some kind of disturbance here. Jake's breath caught. Warren. Deputy Director Warren Blake smiled like a man greeting old friends at a funeral. Jake, my God, it's been too long. Riley didn't move. Her fingers rested lightly on the tablet's edge. Her eyes locked on him, not in surprise, not in fear, but recognition. Blake turned his attention to her, his smile polite and surgical. And you must be Miss Matthews. I've read your file. Impressive service record for a supply clerk. His voice lingered on clerk like an accusation. But there are inconsistencies we need to discuss. He gestured subtly, and one of his men stepped forward, reaching for her arm. Riley didn't flinch. Hello, Warren, she said. The man's hand froze midair. Blake's smile faltered. I'm sorry, have we met? October 25th, Riley said quietly. 0900 hours. You called me yourself. You told me the insertion point had changed. Said it came from the highest levels. You even used my authorization code. For a heartbeat, something flickered in Blake's eyes, not confusion, recognition. Then the mask snapped back into place. That's quite a story, he said, chuckling softly. But stories from mentally unstable individuals rarely hold up under scrutiny. You've been under a lot of stress, Miss Matthews. I think it's best we escort you somewhere safe for evaluation. Riley's trembling hands tightened into fists. You know what I remember, Warren. The sound of my team dying, the smell of burning flesh, the static on comms right after you said, "Good hunting, 7." The soldiers around her went still. Jake's hand found his sidearm, knuckles white. Warren, tell me she's wrong. Blake gave a small, pitying smile. Jake, come on, you really believe this? She's delusional. PTSD, survivor's guilt, God knows what else. There was no ghost unit, no Nightfall, just classified fiction. You think I'd send your wife to die? The last sentence landed like a strike. Riley's eyes softened, not in sympathy but in mourning. She volunteered because of you. You gave the authorization code. She trusted you. Jake's face went blank, the kind of blank that comes right before collapse. His breath hitched once, then twice. "You were my brother," he whispered. "I still am," Blake said gently, stepping forward. "You've been lied to. Don't let this woman manipulate you. She's not who she says she is." Riley tilted her head slightly, her voice calm as glass. "Then maybe you should tell them who I really am." Blake's smile froze completely. His jaw tightened. For the first time he looked uncertain. "I recorded everything," Riley continued. 18 months of investigation. Every message, every transfer, every command. All of it's backed up in 12 different countries. Dead man's switch. If I don't enter a code every 12 hours, it all goes public. The tension in the room became a living thing. Blake's hand moved slowly toward his jacket. Not for a pen, not for a phone, for the weapon he'd hoped he wouldn't have to use. "Don't," Jake said softly, his gun already drawn. His aim didn't waver. For the first time, the deputy director's confident smirk cracked. "Jake," he said, his voice turning low, almost fatherly, "put the gun down. You're being manipulated." "No," Jake whispered, "I'm finally seeing." Then everything happened at once. Blake's hand flashed for his weapon, but Riley was already moving. Despite her trembling, her reflexes were surgical, brutal, efficient. She intercepted his wrist, twisted sharply, a crack, a grunt, and drove him down into the concrete with a force no one her size should have had. His weapon clattered across the floor. Blood spilled from his lip. The two men in suits went for their holsters, but 20 trained operators leveled rifles before they could blink. General Reeves's voice thundered, "Stand down, everyone stand down." The standoff hung for 3 heartbeats that felt eternal. Then, slowly, the men in suits lowered their guns. Riley stepped back, breathing hard, hands shaking uncontrollably now. The adrenaline was too much. Her body couldn't process it like a normal person. Blake rolled over, blood staining his perfect white shirt. "You have no idea what you've done," he spat. "You think you've exposed me. The network I work for is bigger than you can imagine. They'll come for you, for your families, for everyone you've ever." "I'm counting on it," Riley said. Her tone was quiet, deadly. Blake laughed through the blood. "You don't get it, do you? You're one of us. You are the program. You were designed for this. You think your little pills and tremors make you broken. They make you special." Riley's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Blake's grin widened again. "Ask your general. Ask him what happened in the labs under Fort Bragg 15 years ago. Ask him who authorized the Avatar Protocol." The name hit like an echo from a nightmare. Reeves went rigid. "That program was shut down." "No," Blake said, laughing weakly. "It evolved." He turned his bloodied face toward Riley. "You were the only success. Didn't they tell you?" Riley's voice faltered. "Success of what?" "Genetic augmentation," Blake rasped. "The perfect soldier. Self-healing, enhanced reflexes, emotion suppression. Except something went wrong. You started to feel too much. The others died from the serum, but you," his grin turned grotesque, "you survived." Reeves's expression hardened. "Enough." But it was too late. The truth was already seeping into the air like gas. Jake took a step forward, disbelief warring with disgust. "You're saying she's what? Engineered?" Riley said nothing. Her silence was confirmation. Blake's laughter broke into a cough. "You can't kill me. Even if you try, it won't stop. The project runs deep. Every war needs weapons, and every weapon needs testing. You're the proof that it works." Riley crouched beside him, her trembling hand closing around his collar. Her green eyes locked onto his, no longer soft. "You made ghosts," she said quietly. "Now you get to live with them." Her fist slammed into his jaw. The impact echoed. Blake went limp, unconscious. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Derek Hayes broke the silence, voice hoarse. "What the hell is Avatar Protocol?" Reeves sighed, shoulders heavy. "A mistake, one we buried deep." Riley stood slowly, her breath uneven. "Then it's time to dig it up." She turned toward the range windows. The horizon was gold with dying light, beautiful, fragile, fleeting. "When we went into nightfall," she said softly, "we thought we were protecting something worth dying for. Turns out we were just test data." Her voice trembled not with fear but with sorrow. "And the worst part, we volunteered." Reeves's gaze softened, guilt deepening in his weathered face. "You didn't deserve what they did to you." "No one does," she replied. "But it's not about what I deserve, it's about what I do next." She looked down at her shaking hands, the hands that had saved lives and ended others, the hands that couldn't stop trembling no matter how much she fought them. "They built me to be a weapon," she murmured, "but I can still choose what I aim at." Jake stared at her, at the small woman who had just shattered every illusion he had about the world. "If what Blake said is true," he said quietly, "then what are you?" Riley looked up, green eyes catching the light, steady for the first time all day. "Human," she said, "by choice." The range was silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And in that silence, something irreversible had begun, a quiet war between what mankind could make and what it could never control. Why did the room feel colder the moment Blake stopped talking? It wasn't the air conditioning. It wasn't the concrete walls or the steel beams or the winter wind clawing at the range doors. It was the truth, heavy, suffocating, terrifying, uncoiling slowly across the minds of everyone present. Blake lay unconscious on the floor, his suit torn, blood trailing from his mouth in a thin red line. But even unconscious, he dominated the room. Not because he was powerful, but because of the shadow he represented. A shadow older than Ghost Unit, older than Sarah Morrison, older than Riley herself. A shadow built in laboratories and back rooms, in signatures on classified documents and silent nods in Senate chambers. A shadow called Avatar Protocol. Riley stood above him, still trembling, still breathing too fast, still unsure if what she'd heard was real or if her brain was trying to protect her from a deeper truth. Her fingers twitched at her sides, not from fear, from memory, from scars in her nerves, from the serum that ran through her blood like a curse and a command. General Reeves broke the silence first. "We need to detain him," he said in a low voice. "Get him under military arrest before CIA pulls jurisdiction." Derek Hayes snorted bitterly. "CIA? They'll try to vanish him the second they hear he's in custody." Jake stepped forward, wiping blood from his knuckles. "Good, let them try, they'll have to come through me." He sounded like someone who had run out of grief to feel and found rage beneath it, deep, endless, blinding. But even that rage flickered when his eyes found Riley again. She wasn't looking at anyone. She was staring at her own hands. Her left hand was twitching, a quick rhythmic spasm that traveled up her wrist, her forearm, her shoulder. The tremors were worse now. The pills had worn off. Her body was fighting itself again. She hated when people stared at her hands. But Jake wasn't staring. He was studying her face, for signs of truth or deception or something human in the ruins of everything he'd believed. "Riley," he said quietly, "did you know?" Her eyes lifted slowly. "About the protocol, about the labs, about me." Jake swallowed. "Any of it." A pause. Then Riley exhaled, slow, tired, injured. "No." She said it like a confession, like a wound reopening. "I knew I survived nightfall. I knew I was wrong, different. But I thought it was trauma, nerve damage, side effects of the surgeries. I didn't know I was." Her voice cracked, the way metal cracks under too much stress. "Engineered." The word hung in the air like smoke. None of the men spoke, not because they didn't have something to say, but because they had too much. Regret, shock, pity, fear, confusion. Riley wasn't sure which was worse. She closed her eyes, forcing her breath steady. I don't know what part of me is real. My memories, my training, my childhood, it could all be manufactured. Reeves stepped forward. No memory is fake if it shaped you. It doesn't matter where they came from. What matters is what you do with them. Riley's voice was barely a whisper. Is that what you told the scientists? The general flinched, not visibly, not enough for the others to notice. But Riley saw it, the tiny shift in his jawline, the subtle tightening of his shoulder. He knew more than he wanted to admit. Before anyone could press him, a shrill notification beep burst from Riley's tablet, a rare sound, sharp enough to make every man in the room freeze. Riley's head snapped toward the screen. Encrypted high priority, live feed. She tapped the icon, and the room went silent. 12 figures in orange jumpsuits knelt on a concrete floor, faces bruised, bodies emaciated, eyes hollow, hands bound, a black flag behind them flickering under a dim overhead bulb. The camera panned slowly, letting the horror burn itself into the viewers' minds. CIA, Derek whispered. Those are the hostages. No, Riley murmured. They're not. The camera zoomed in, and the illusion shattered. These weren't CIA operatives. These were soldiers. Ghost unit. Or what was left of them. Reeves stumbled back a step, hand covering his mouth. But they were reported KIA 2 years ago, their bodies. There were no bodies, Riley whispered, just reports. The camera stopped on one face in particular, gaunt, scarred, barely conscious. Jake stopped breathing. Sarah, he choked, Sarah. It didn't look like her, not the woman in their wedding photo, not the woman who'd kissed him goodbye the last time he saw her. This woman was thinner, broken, drugged, but her eyes, even in the haze, were the same. The room blurred around Jake. He collapsed to his knees again, fingers digging into the concrete. Reeves gripped the back of a chair like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Dear God. Riley didn't blink, couldn't. Her heart beat so hard she felt it in her fingertips. A masked figure stepped into frame, a man in black tactical gear, American accent, calm, rehearsed. Ghost 7, he said. We know you are watching. You have 48 hours. A set of coordinates flashed on screen, deep inside Syrian territory. Come alone, surrender yourself, or we execute them all on live broadcast. Jake lunged for the screen like he could climb inside it. Sarah, I'm coming, Riley grabbed his arm hard enough to bruise. Stop, that's what they want. He fought against her grip, but she didn't let him go. They'll kill her, he shouted. Riley leaned close, voice razor-sharp. They'll kill her if you go. They'll kill her if I go. They'll kill her if we do nothing. Jake's face contorted with grief. Then what are we supposed to do? We think, Riley said quietly. We don't run into traps designed by men who study our reactions. The screen cut to black. A timer appeared. 47 hours, 59 minutes, 43 seconds. The countdown to hell. The silence afterward was heavy. No one wanted to break it. No one knew how. Finally, Derek Hayes whispered. My brother David was on Nightfall. If these guys are alive, does that mean? Riley's throat tightened. David was one of the bodies I saw in the first cell corridor. Derek closed his eyes. Pain cracked across his face like lightning, but he didn't break, not fully. He swallowed hard, nodded once. Then I'm going, he said, to bring home whatever's left. Jake nodded too. I don't care if Sarah's broken, she's breathing, that's enough. Reeves shook his head sharply. Absolutely not. This is a trap designed by experts in psychological warfare. We're not sending a team into a meat grinder. We're not sending a team, Jake snapped. We're going. And leaving the moment you step off this base, Reeves said coldly. I will relieve you of duty. Jake opened his mouth, but Riley stepped between them. "General," she said softly, "we don't need permission." Reeves stared at her long, searching, pained. "You're not well, you're shaking. You need medical." "I need to end this," Riley whispered. "Ghost Unit deserves truth. They deserve peace. And Sarah deserves the chance to choose what happens to her." Jake's eyes softened, filled with a pain so raw it almost looked like love. Not romantic, human. A bond forged by grief and betrayal. Reeves exhaled shakily. "If I say nothing, if I turn around for 5 minutes, and when I turn back, 20 soldiers are missing, I can't stop what I didn't see." Riley nodded, understood. Reeves turned away. "I'll be back in 5 minutes." As the door closed, Derek whispered, "So we're actually doing this. A rescue mission for people who might not even want to be rescued." Riley stared at the dark screen, the countdown ticking. "We're doing this," she said softly, "because some people lose their humanity in captivity." Her trembling hand tightened into a fist. "And some of us lose it long before." She lifted her eyes. "But we fight for it anyway." Her voice softened. "That's what makes us human." Behind them, Blake groaned on the floor. Riley didn't look back. The battle had already begun long before the mission, long before the betrayal, long before nightfall. It began the moment she realized humanity isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose. How many times can a soldier die before death finally sticks? The hangar smelled like metal, oil, and rain. Outside, the wind hissed through broken shutters. Inside, 20 figures stood in the half-dark, faces half-shadowed under the flickering fluorescent lights. They didn't wear uniforms anymore. No insignia, no rank. Just ghosts preparing to go where living soldiers couldn't. Riley stood at the edge of the group, her hands shaking as she adjusted the scope on her rifle. The tremor had worsened again, spreading up her arm like electricity. The nerve stabilizers she'd taken earlier had worn off, and the pain was back, a deep, burning ache beneath her skin. But she didn't ask for another dose. Pain meant she was still alive. It meant she could still feel. Jake Morrison loaded magazines with mechanical precision. No jokes now. No swagger. Just silent, simmering purpose. His jaw was clenched, his movements crisp and deliberate, the rhythm of a man preparing for something he didn't expect to survive. Every so often he glanced at Riley. Not with anger. Not anymore. Just quiet confusion, the kind you feel when the world you knew is gone and the only person who seems to understand is the one who destroyed it. Derek Hayes sat nearby, writing something on a folded scrap of paper. When Riley passed, he didn't hide it. She caught a glimpse of the first line, "For my brother." He didn't need to say more, she understood. They all did. Marcus Webb checked the detonator system twice, maybe 3 times, then muttered to himself, "No medals for this one, huh?" Riley looked up from her rifle. "We're not here for medals." Webb gave a dry laugh. "Good, I never liked the color gold." A few of the others smiled, brief, hollow, but real. It was enough to break the tension, if only for a moment. At the far end of the hangar, General Reeves leaned against a support beam, arms crossed, pretending he wasn't watching. Technically, he wasn't supposed to be there. Officially, he didn't know about this mission. But his eyes told a different story, the eyes of a man who'd buried too many soldiers and refused to bury another if he could help it. He approached quietly, stopping beside Riley. "You know I can't sanction this." "I know," she said. "Then why tell me?" "Because someone should know where to send the bodies." Reeves looked at her, really looked at her. The scars, the tremor, the hollow under her eyes that came from months of insomnia and ghosts that refused to die. "You think that's all this is? A suicide note?" Riley gave a small, humorless smile. "No, suicide's giving up. This is choosing how to go out." Reeves sighed. "You always talk like you've already died." "I did," she said softly. 4 minutes, 37 seconds. After that, everything's just been borrowed time." He studied her in silence. Then, without another word, he slipped something into her hand. Dog tags, dull metal, edges worn smooth. Her own name on one side, the word Ghost 7 on the other. Beneath that, in small, scratched letters, be the proof. I found them in evidence storage, Reeves said. You left them behind when you went off-grid, thought you might want them back. Riley turned the tags over in her palm. The metal was cold, familiar, proof of what? That you exist, Reeves said quietly. That you're not just data in someone's file. She looked down at the tags. Maybe that's all I ever was. Then make sure they remember the difference. He walked away before she could respond. The others continued loading gear, silencers, ammo, field medkits, packs of unmarked rations. Everything unofficial, everything deniable. The kind of operation that vanished from history the moment it ended. Derek approached her as she checked her rifle's balance. You sure you want to lead this? Riley nodded. I'm the only one who knows the tunnels. And the only one they actually want, Derek added quietly. Riley's green eyes met his. That's why it'll work. Derek frowned. You're planning to let them take you. No, she said. I'm planning to make them believe they did. He hesitated. What if they don't buy it? Then we make them. The sound of rain began to drum harder against the hangar roof, slow at first, then steady. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. It felt like the world itself was watching, waiting. Jake walked over, tightening the strap on his vest. I've got a question, he said. Why us? Riley didn't look up. Because you volunteered. Yeah, but why ask? His tone wasn't angry, just searching. You could have done this alone, we all know it. Riley's hand stilled on the rifle. Because alone is how Ghost Unit died. Together is the only way we have a chance. Jake nodded slowly. Then quieter, you really think Sarah's alive? Riley hesitated. I think the woman in that video is breathing. Whether she's still your wife, she let the thought trail off. Jake's jaw tightened. If she's breathing, that's enough. Riley met his gaze. Then promise me something. What? When you see her, don't let what you remember blind you to who she's become. Jake frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means captivity changes people. 18 months is a long time to survive hell. She might not be the same woman you lost. Jake looked away, his voice tight. Neither am I. Riley nodded. Then maybe you'll understand each other. Across the hangar, Marcus Webb called out, 10 minutes till load-up. The men began checking final gear. Derek secured the detonator charges. Jake packed the encrypted radios. Riley opened a metal case containing syringes filled with clear liquid. Derek noticed that the serum. She nodded. Concentrated version, designed for combat enhancement. 1 dose boosts reaction time, pain tolerance, oxygen absorption. And kills you in minutes, Derek finished. Depends how much is left in your system already, she said. For me, it buys time. Maybe 10 minutes of clarity, long enough to finish what I started. Derek shook his head. You're really not planning on coming back, are you? Riley looked down at the trembling in her hands. I stopped planning for that a long time ago. The wind outside intensified, rattling the hangar doors. Reeves returned, eyes grim. There's a private contractor's jet leaving from the civilian field in 2 hours. Officially, it's carrying cargo to Jordan. Unofficially, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Riley nodded, understood. He hesitated, then asked softly, you ever wonder what happens after all this? If you actually make it home? Riley paused. Home isn't a place, sir, it's a moment. You recognize it when it happens and then it's gone. He stared at her, as if committing every word to memory. Then he saluted not by regulation, but by respect, and walked out into the rain. The hangar doors closed behind him. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the rain and the steady tick of weapons being checked, rechecked, loaded, cleaned. Every man moved with quiet purpose. the kind of silence that comes when there's nothing left to say that won't make things harder. Finally, Riley spoke, her voice soft but steady. When we hit that compound, the world won't know we're there. No flags, no call signs, no rescue if we fail. We'll be ghosts again. She looked at each of them in turn. You don't owe me this. You don't owe Ghost Unit this. If anyone wants out, now's the time. No one moved. Derek looked up. We all lost something to this program. Might as well make our losses count. Marcus Webb nodded. Besides, somebody's gotta make sure you don't go full Terminator on us. A few quiet laughs rippled through the room, weary, sincere. Riley smiled faintly. Jake stood last. You saved my life once, he said. You saved Sarah's. You shouldn't have to do this alone. Riley's reply was quiet. I never did. The convoy of black trucks arrived under the cover of darkness. Engines low, lights off. Their shapes melted into the storm. The rain hadn't stopped, it poured in sheets now, turning the tarmac into mirrors of moving water. As they loaded gear, Derek slipped the folded note into Riley's pocket. In case you don't make it. She frowned. What is it? Closure, he said. Something you're owed too. Before she could respond, he was gone, climbing into the next vehicle. Riley climbed into the lead truck beside Jake. The engine growled to life, and the hangar began to shrink behind them, that last fragile slice of safety disappearing into the rain. The road ahead stretched into nothing, just blackness and lightning, and the steady countdown ticking somewhere in the back of her mind. Jake spoke without looking at her. You scared? Riley's fingers tapped against her thigh. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her old breathing rhythm. Yes, she said finally, terrified. Jake nodded. Good, means you're still human. She turned her head toward the rain-streaked window, watching the distant flashes of lightning over the airfield. That's what scares me the most. They reached the private airstrip just before midnight. The cargo plane waited at the far end of the runway, no markings, no lights, a ghost bird ready to fly into a war no one would ever admit existed. The rain had eased into a mist, the kind that clings to everything it touches. The pilot gave a single nod. You're clear to board. As the team climbed the ramp, Riley paused, looking back at the runway, the faint outline of Fort Bragg far beyond it, the place where everything had begun, and where everything she was pretending to be had already died. She touched the dog tags at her throat. Ghost 7, she whispered, not as a call sign but as a memory. Then she stepped into the plane. The engines roared to life, drowning out every thought. The world outside disappeared into fog and darkness. Inside, the cabin was dim, lined with makeshift seating, gear, and men who had already made peace with their ghosts. Riley sat near the window, hands clasped, eyes distant. Every vibration of the engines pulsed through her bones, each one a reminder that she was leaving something behind, the illusion of being ordinary. For a long time she didn't move, didn't blink, just stared into the dark until Jake's voice broke through the hum of the engines. When this is over, he said, what happens to you? Riley turned, her expression unreadable. I stop running. He nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and whispered into the hum of the aircraft. If ghosts can die, maybe I finally will too. Outside, lightning split the sky in two, and somewhere across the world, the timer on the video kept counting down. 47 hours. And falling. How far can someone go before they stop being who they were? The hum of the engines was constant, low, rhythmic, hypnotic. Outside the small windows, darkness stretched forever. No stars, no horizon, just the deep, endless black that felt like the inside of a heartbeat. Inside the plane, it was colder than anyone expected. Not because of the altitude, because of the silence. 20 men and 1 woman, flying toward coordinates that promised death or something worse. Riley sat near the rear, her rifle disassembled on her lap. She cleaned the barrel with methodical precision, each movement slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. Her hands still shook, but the focus steadied her breathing. The smell of gun oil filled the air, sharp, clean, familiar. It grounded her. Jake sat across from her, a map projected on his tablet. He traced the route with a gloved finger. "We dropped 20 clicks south of Aleppo," he said quietly. "Extraction route follows the river north. They've got anti-air coverage all around this grid. We go in silent, no comms." Riley nodded. "They're expecting me, not us. That's our advantage." Marcus Webb snorted from across the aisle. "Advantage? I'd call that suicide with extra paperwork." Derek elbowed him lightly. "She's not wrong, though. They'll have ground sensors tuned to her biometric signature, if we keep our distance until she signals." Jake cut him off. "We're not letting her walk in alone." Riley looked up. "You won't have a choice." Jake frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She set down the cleaning rod and met his eyes. "They'll detect me the moment I'm within a kilometer. If you're close, they'll sense multiple heat signatures and trigger automatic defenses. If I go alone, they'll assume compliance." Derek shifted uneasily. "So you're bait." "I'm leverage," Riley said simply. "The kind they won't kill until they're sure they've broken me." Jake's jaw tightened. "You sound like you've accepted that." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her vest pocket and pulled out the folded paper Derek had slipped there earlier. She hadn't looked at it since. Slowly, she unfolded it now. "For my brother," it began again, but below there were more words. "If you find him, don't tell him I hate him for what he became. Tell him I forgive him. Because sometimes surviving is the worst punishment there is." Riley stared at the note for a long time, her throat tight. She folded it again carefully and slipped it back into her vest. Jake watched her. "What's that?" "Something worth remembering," she said quietly. The pilot's voice crackled through the cabin intercom. "Approaching drop zone, 2 minutes." The soldiers began to stand, checking gear, tightening straps. The atmosphere shifted, the kind of focused calm that happens right before chaos. Fear became motion. Thought became muscle. Riley stood last. She checked her weapon one final time, her movements mechanical, automatic. But her eyes were far away. Somewhere between past and present, life and something less than it. Jake moved closer. "Hey," he said softly, "you still with me?" She looked up, and for the first time she didn't mask the exhaustion. Barely. "You don't have to do this alone." She smiled faintly. "That's what everyone says right before they watch me disappear." Jake's voice lowered. "And what if this time someone follows you?" Her smile faded. "Then maybe I don't come back." He looked at her, his expression torn between anger and grief. "You think you're the only one broken by this?" "No," she said softly, "just the only one designed to survive it." The red jump light flickered on. 30 seconds, the pilot called. Riley secured her harness. The others followed. The noise in the cabin rose, straps, wind, mechanical roars. Jake reached out suddenly, gripping her forearm. His hand was warm, hers cold. "If we die down there," he said, "I just want you to know." She cut him off. Not now." Jake's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Some words weren't meant for the air before death. The ramp opened. The storm swallowed them whole. Wind tore at their faces, rain like needles, black sky roaring around them. One by one, the team leapt into the void. Riley jumped last, silent, precise, her form cutting through the darkness like a falling shadow. The descent was fast, brutal. The clouds ripped past. For a few seconds she felt weightless, free. Then the ground rose up to meet her. The landing was perfect, controlled, mechanical. She rolled, absorbed the impact, came up on one knee with her weapon raised. All around, silhouettes emerged from the night. The team regrouped, whispering through hand signals. No lights, no words, just the soft crunch of boots in wet dirt and the heavy rhythm of breathing under masks. They moved through the ruins of an abandoned industrial zone, rusted pipes, collapsed walls, the smell of oil and decay. The moon broke through the clouds for an instant, painting everything in silver-blue light. That brief glow revealed what time had done, the bones of a city left behind by war, forgotten and unburied. Riley crouched near a broken wall, scanning ahead with infrared. Two guards motionless, too still. "They're not human," she whispered. "Decoys." Jake frowned. "What?" "Thermal signatures rigged to heat sensors," she said. "They're testing the perimeter, making sure I'm the one approaching." Derek muttered, "Jesus, they really are expecting you." Riley nodded. "They always were." She motioned for the others to fan out, staying behind cover. Her earpiece buzzed once, encrypted short-range link. Static, then a faint pulse. She froze. They were pinging her, tracing her ID tag. Her pulse quickened. "They found me," she whispered. "Get ready." Jake moved closer. "You don't have to." "I do." She stepped out from behind the wall and into the open field. Rain dripped from her hood, soaking her sleeves. She kept her hands visible, weapons slung. The infrared laser swept over her chest once, then twice. A voice crackled through a nearby speaker, distorted but unmistakably human. "Ghost 7, it said. You made it." Riley exhaled. "Yeah, you asked for me." There was a pause, then, "Follow the lights." Small beacons flickered on in the distance, leading toward the central structure, a concrete block with no windows, half sunk into the ground like a bunker that wanted to bury itself. Behind her, Jake whispered into his comm, "We're tracking her. Move to flank positions." Riley heard him but didn't look back. Her footsteps echoed softly on wet ground. Each step was heavier than the last. When she reached the door, it opened with a slow metallic groan. Two masked guards stepped aside. She walked through. The air inside was colder, heavy with disinfectant and rot. The hum of fluorescent lights vibrated faintly against her skull. Every sound, every smell, every flicker of light triggered memories. The labs, the testing, the sound of glass breaking under fists, the endless questions. "How does it feel, Riley? How much pain can you process before you lose consciousness?" Her stomach turned. She swallowed hard. Down the corridor she saw them. The hostages. 12 figures kneeling again, but now closer. Real, breathing, trembling. Their faces pale under harsh light. Jake's wife was among them. Sarah Morrison. Eyes half open, body shaking, mouth moving as if whispering something only she could hear. Riley's throat went dry. A voice echoed from above, smooth, confident, familiar. "I have to admit, you're hard to kill." Riley froze. The voice was Blake. It was colder, female. From the shadows at the far end of the corridor, a figure emerged, tall, slender, dressed in black tactical gear. A face Riley hadn't seen in years. A face she'd hoped was dead. "Colonel Sloan," she whispered. The woman smiled thinly. "They told me you'd come. I almost didn't believe it. The experiment that got away." Riley's fingers twitched. "You ran the labs." "I perfected them," Sloan corrected. "You were supposed to be the prototype, but you developed empathy. That wasn't part of the design." Riley's voice dropped to a whisper. "Maybe that's why I survived." Sloan tilted her head. "Oh, you didn't survive, Riley. You adapted. There's a difference." Behind Sloan, guards dragged Sarah to her feet. The woman's eyes fluttered open, foggy, unfocused, broken. She looked at Riley, and for a moment something flickered. Recognition, fear, gratitude, all at once. "Sarah," Riley said softly, "we're here to take you home." Sloan's smile deepened. "Home? There is no home for creatures like us." Riley's pulse quickened. "Let them go." Sloan walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. "You still think you're one of them, human, but every cell in your body says otherwise. You're a machine wrapped in skin, a weapon pretending to care." Riley's voice was quiet, trembling with emotion she didn't want to show. "Maybe, but even weapons can choose what they point at. Sloane's eyes darkened, then pointed at me. She raised her hand. The light snapped to red. Dozens of soldiers flooded the room, rifles raised. Alarms blared. The hostages screamed. Riley dove forward, instinct, motion, survival. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off steel. She rolled behind a crate, heart hammering. In her earpiece, Jake's voice cracked through static. "We're in, hold position." Riley's breath came in gasps. She looked up, saw Sloane retreating toward an elevator, dragging Sarah with her. Riley's blood went cold. She grabbed her rifle and ran. Every step echoed with a single thought. "You were made for this, but not by choice." She fired once, twice, cutting down the guards ahead. The red lights flickered, the sirens wailed, the walls shook, and somewhere deep inside, beneath all the training and the enhancements and the terror, something broke loose. Something human. What happens when the monster you're chasing starts to sound like you? The hallway was painted in red light and smoke. The sirens howled like something alive, pulsing in rhythm with Riley's heartbeat. Her boots splashed through shallow puddles of blood and chemical runoff, every step echoing the chaos unraveling through the underground compound. The mission had already gone to hell. Jake's voice crackled through the comms, distorted, frantic. "We've got hostiles on levels 2 and 3. They're trying to lock us in." Riley sprinted around a corner, rifle up, breath ragged. "Find the hostages. Secure extraction routes. I'm heading for Sloane." "Riley, damn it, wait." Static swallowed his words. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and ozone. Sparks rained from severed cables overhead. As she moved deeper into the corridor, the walls began to change from concrete to smooth metallic panels etched with identification tags, each one labeled with numbers. AV-02, AV-03, AV-04. Her chest tightened. The same labels she'd seen in the lab years ago. The same numbers that used to scream back at her in nightmares. She stopped, fingers brushing the wall. The metal was cold, slick with condensation. Behind it, faint humming, mechanical, rhythmic, like heartbeats trapped in machines. She knew what that sound was. The containment pods. She looked through the reinforced glass of the nearest door. Inside, a row of vertical capsules glowed faintly blue. Inside each shapes. Human, almost. Her stomach turned. The faces inside the pods were incomplete. Some had no eyes, some no mouths. Some still moved, twitching, reaching out as if begging to be let out. And on each pod, the same line of text scrolled endlessly on the display. Subject status, failure terminated. Riley pressed her forehead against the glass, fighting nausea. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, shaking, hollow-eyed, surrounded by the ghosts of what she could have been, what she was supposed to be. A sound behind her, the click of a weapon being drawn. She spun, rifle raised. Jake stood there, soaked in sweat and dust, his vest half torn. Behind him, Derek and Marcus carried one of the freed hostages, barely conscious, bleeding. The others covered the rear. They fought their way down, somehow still breathing. "Jesus," Jake whispered, looking past her at the pods. "What the hell is this place?" Riley's voice came out flat. "The graveyard." Derek glanced at one of the capsules, face pale. "Are those?" "Versions," Riley said softly. "Prototypes. They used our DNA to build them. Most didn't survive the first sequence." Jake stared at her, realization dawning. "Our DNA." She hesitated. "Ghost unit. They didn't just experiment on me. We were all part of it. Every mission, every medical check, every debriefing, data collection. They built copies of us. And when we died, they made more." Marcus cursed under his breath. "You mean we're fighting in the same war twice?" Riley's voice trembled. "We never stopped." A sudden rumble shook the floor. Alarms flashed red to white. Riley's earpiece screamed with static, then a new voice broke through. Calm, cold. "Nice to see you found the memorial, Ghost 7. Riley froze Sloan. Still trying to make sense of it all, the colonel's voice purred through the speakers. You always were sentimental. Do you know what they called you after you escaped? The anomaly, the failure that felt. Riley looked up at the nearest camera lens. And what does that make you? Sloan chuckled, the cure. The corridor lights shut off. The hum of generators dropped to silence. Then the floor panels under Riley's boots glowed blue. One by one, the pods along the walls began to open. His snap release. Inside the glass, the failed prototype started to move. Jake shouted, "Contact multiple." The first of them stumbled into the corridor. Human shape in human motion. Eyes unfocused, muscles jerking, skin marbled with veins that glowed faintly beneath the surface. They didn't scream. They didn't breathe. They just advanced. "Open fire," Derek yelled. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the steel walls. Rounds tore through the creatures, but they didn't fall easily. Some kept moving even after half their bodies were gone. The air filled with the sound of bullets and inhuman moans. Riley fired in controlled bursts, surgical and unrelenting. Her mind split between instinct and memory, the training they'd forced into her bones. She didn't think. She calculated. 3 seconds, 2 shots, shift right, repeat. When the last of them fell, the corridor was a graveyard of bodies that didn't belong to anyone. Derek leaned against the wall, panting. "They're not soldiers, they're tests." Riley's voice was hollow. "They're me." Jake turned to her. "No, they're what you were meant to be. That's not the same thing." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't answer. She just pointed ahead. "Sloan in control sector." They pushed forward, deeper into the compound. The architecture shifted again from labs to command. Wide steel doors, reinforced glass, walls lined with data screens showing live feeds of the base, each labeled with codes Riley recognized. AV-07 neural sync, serum regulation, subject retention. At the far end, a circular room bathed in white light. In its center, a glass platform suspended above a pit of machinery. Colonel Sloan stood at the console, calm as a surgeon. Next to her, bound and barely conscious, was Sarah Morrison. Jake's breath caught. "Sarah." Sloan smiled without turning. "You should be honored, Captain. Your wife's quite resilient. She volunteered to test the neural sync system before we extracted her memories." Jake's voice broke. "What did you do to her?" "Rebuilt her," Sloan said, "just like we rebuilt Riley." Riley raised her rifle. "Let her go." Sloan turned slowly, eyes cold, sharp. "If I do, the sync collapses. The moment she leaves that chair, she dies. Her neural system is running on the same architecture as yours." Jake looked at Riley in confusion. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," Sloan said softly, "they share the same frequency now. Kill one, you kill both." Riley's heart dropped. "You're lying." "Am I?" Sloan tapped a control key. The monitors flashed 2 brainwave patterns, identical, pulsing in perfect sync. One labeled subject AV-07, the other, Sarah Morrison. Jake stared in horror. No, that's not possible." Sloan smiled faintly. "Oh, but it is. She was the only compatible donor. We used your DNA to stabilize the serum, Riley. She's your twin in a sense, a perfect mirror." Riley's mind reeled. "That's not true, I don't have." "You don't remember," Sloan interrupted, "because we erased it. The emotional tether was too unstable, but the data doesn't lie. The first test subject was your genetic match." The words felt like bullets. Sarah's weak voice broke through the hum. "Riley, help me." Riley lowered her weapon slightly, torn between disbelief and something deeper, guilt. She saw flashes, a girl's laughter, a hand reaching for hers, the sound of rain on a window, a memory that shouldn't exist. Jake's voice cracked. "She's my wife." Riley's voice trembled. "She was my sister." The truth hit like a detonation. The air seemed to collapse inward. Sloane watched with quiet satisfaction. Now you understand. You were never a soldier. You were an experiment in loyalty. We wanted to see if shared emotion could make enhanced soldiers more efficient. It worked too well. Riley shook her head. You turned us into weapons. We gave you purpose, Sloane said, and you gave us proof. Riley's trembling hands tightened on her rifle. Then this is your proof. She fired. The shot shattered the control panel beside Sloane. Sparks erupted, alarms blared, the lights flickered violently. Sloane dove for cover, shouting orders. Riley sprinted forward, cutting down 2 guards, sliding across the slick floor toward Sarah. Riley, wait, Jake shouted. The neural sync monitor spiked, Sarah convulsed, screaming. Riley skidded to a halt, horror freezing her mid-motion. Stop, Sloane yelled. You'll kill her. Riley dropped her rifle and reached out, trembling. I can't let her die here. She's already dying, Sloane hissed. At least make it mean something. Jake's shout echoed across the chamber. There's always another way. But Riley's voice was barely a whisper. Not this time. Her trembling hand reached for the control node on the chair, the pulse generator linking Sarah's system to the neural core. She could see the data spike, both signatures rising in sync, heartbeat to heartbeat, thought to thought. Riley, don't, Jake screamed. Her hand came down. The world turned white. A wave of light exploded outward, throwing everyone off their feet. The sound wasn't just noise, it was pressure, vibration, grief itself turned into energy. The monitors burst. The glass floor shattered. And then silence. When the light faded, Sarah lay still, peaceful, eyes closed. The sync monitor was blank. Riley knelt beside her, blood dripping from her own nose, her breathing ragged. It's done, she whispered. Sloane pulled herself up, coughing, eyes wide with rage. You fool, you don't even know what you've unleashed. Riley turned, her expression calm. No, you don't. Behind her, the remaining pods began to explode one by one, chain reactions, tearing through the lower levels. Flames licked up the walls. The compound shuddered, metal screaming as it collapsed. Jake stumbled toward Riley, grabbing her arm. We have to go. She looked back at Sarah's body, then up at the rising fire. She's free, she said softly. That's enough. Jake's voice broke. What about you? Riley's green eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. I stopped belonging to this world the day they built me. Then she smiled, tired, broken, but real. Go, be human for both of us. Jake hesitated, just long enough to see the fire reflected in her eyes, then turned, dragging Derek and the others toward the exit as the structure caved around them. Riley stayed. The flames rose higher, wrapping the room in gold and smoke. She sat beside Sarah, hand resting on her shoulder. Sometimes, she whispered through the roar, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The roof began to collapse. And Ghost 7 closed her eyes. Why do the quietest nights echo the loudest? The fire had burned for 3 days straight. From the air, the desert looked like a scar, blackened earth, twisted metal, smoke still rising from deep beneath the sand. The compound was gone. Nothing left but ash, fragments of concrete and questions that would never find clean answers. The rescue teams called it an accident, a gas leak, a terrorist base that imploded during a raid, the kind of story that looked neat on paper and died quietly in headlines. But Jake Morrison knew better. He stood at the edge of the crater as the morning sun climbed over the horizon. His uniform was gone, just civilian clothes now, sleeves rolled to his elbows, scars still healing along his forearms. The wind carried the smell of burnt fuel and dust. Somewhere beneath all that, he could still smell her, that faint mix of gun oil and rain that always clung to Riley's jacket. He hadn't said a word since the extraction, not during the debriefings, not during the hospital stay, not even when the agency men came asking their polite, poisonous questions. He stared through them all, because the truth was simple. If he said it out loud, it would stop feeling real. He'd watched her die, or thought he had. The others were alive. Derek, Webb, two more from the team, all broken in different ways, all quietly disappearing into civilian life under new names, the kind of ghosts that walked through crowds unseen. Derek approached now, his limp still noticeable, his beard thicker. He held 2 mugs of coffee, one steaming, one already cooling from the walk. He handed Jake the cooler one. "You've been out here 3 hours." Jake didn't answer. Derek followed his gaze toward the pit. "They say the fire melted everything under 20 feet of steel. Nothing survived." Jake's grip tightened on the mug. "She survived worse." "Jake, I saw her die once before," he interrupted quietly. "I buried an empty coffin. Then she showed up years later with that same look in her eyes. You think a little fire's gonna stop her?" Derek hesitated. "I think sometimes believing in ghosts is easier than letting go." Jake's jaw clenched. "Then I'll take the ghosts." They stood in silence for a while. The desert wind carried a low hum from the equipment trucks behind them, generators, satellite uplinks, media drones pretending they weren't government property. A cleanup crew for the truth. Derek finally said, "Washington's nervous. They want this buried. The files, the footage, everything." Jake nodded faintly. "Yeah, figures. They're saying it was a rogue operation. That Sloan went off-grid, used foreign funding. The usual scapegoat play." Jake's eyes flicked to the horizon. "And Riley?" "Officially," Derek took a slow sip of coffee, "she never existed." That sentence cut deeper than any wound he'd taken in the compound. The way bureaucracies erased people with ink. It was quieter than death, but somehow crueler. Jake stared down at the ground. "She deserved more than that." Derek nodded. "Yeah, but you know what she'd say." Jake gave a faint, sad smile. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak." They shared a silence that said more than any memorial could. Behind them, the sound of rotors rose low, steady, approaching fast. A helicopter, military, neither of them moved. The chopper swept over the crater once, its downdraft scattering ash and dust into the wind. Then it circled away, vanishing into the glare. When the wind settled, something glinted in the sunlight near the crater's edge. Jake frowned, stepped closer, crouched. A piece of metal, burnt, bent, half melted, but the engraving was still visible. "Ghost 7. He reached out and brushed the soot away. Beneath it, a second line, faint, almost gone. "Be the proof." His throat tightened. "Reeves gave her those." Derek crouched beside him. "You think she dropped it?" Jake shook his head slowly. "No, I think she left it." They stared at it for a long time. Then Jake slid it into his pocket, careful, like it might shatter if he breathed too hard. By nightfall, they were gone. The crater faded into shadow, then into memory, another classified ruin no one would talk about. The desert would bury it as it always did. Weeks passed. Somewhere in Washington, a congressional subcommittee met behind closed doors. No cameras, no transcripts, just suits, silence, and the faint smell of fear. On the wall screen, satellite images flickered, blurred stills of the Syrian facility before the explosion. A voice narrated in monotone. "Project Avatar operational timeline confirmed from 2008 to 2024. Overseen by Joint Task Force Intelligence under civilian advisement. Subject anomalies. 7. Survivors. Unknown." A senator leaned forward. "You're saying we were building human weapons?" Another voice, older, colder, replied, "We were building survivors." The room went quiet. Then the same voice continued, "And one of them's still out there." Half a world away, Jake Morrison sat in a dim motel room. The television was on but muted. The news ticker crawled across the bottom of the screen, something about sanctions, border tensions, a new diplomatic summit. Nothing that mattered. On the table beside him lay a worn notebook. Inside, sketches, maps, notes, patterns of unsanctioned operations, names that kept showing up where they shouldn't, the same three letters circled again and again. AVP. He didn't sleep much anymore. Every night the same dream, the fire, the blinding light, her voice whispering through the static. Don't forget who you are. He'd wake up with her dog tag in his hand. Sometimes he swore he could still hear her, not a voice exactly, a feeling, the same way soldiers feel a shot before it's fired. The phone on the nightstand buzzed once. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered, yeah. Static, then a voice, low, distorted, female. Jake. He froze, Riley. No answer, just breathing. Then they're still running tests. Different names now, different countries, you need to stop them. Where are you? He whispered. Silence. Then the line went dead. Jake stared at the phone, heart pounding. He replayed the call again and again in his head, searching for doubt, for proof it wasn't her. But the cadence, the quiet control, the half-second pause before every sentence, it was her. It had to be. He picked up his notebook, flipped to a fresh page, and wrote 2 words at the top. Ghost 7. Then underneath. Still breathing. He packed what little he had, the pistol, the notebook, the tag, and walked out into the cold dawn. Somewhere else, far away, a city that never made the news, buried deep in the mountains of northern Georgia. A lab humming quietly beneath a decommissioned base. Inside, men in white coats reviewed data on glowing screens. One of them stopped suddenly, frowning. This can't be right. Another looked up. What? He pointed at the monitor. The serum degradation model, it's off the charts. Someone's using it, not a test run, a live subject. The second man leaned closer. Coordinates. The first hesitated. Somewhere outside Istanbul. The second smiled faintly. Then Ghost 7 really was the proof. The lights flickered once. Then went out. In the dark, the sound of glass breaking. A scream. Then silence. When the lights came back on, the room was empty. Only a single sentence glowed on the central monitor, typed by no visible hand. You built survivors, now survive this. The wind over the desert still carried her name. Sometimes, at night, when the sand shifted just right, it whispered through the ruins like a memory refusing to die. Jake returned to the crater one last time months later, under a sky filled with stars. He stood there for hours, saying nothing, just listening, waiting. When he turned to leave, a single bullet casing rolled out of the sand near his boot. Not new, not corroded either, clean, polished, like it had been left there. He picked it up. Etched into the metal, barely visible in moonlight. 4,000 meters. He smiled then, just once, small and sad. Somewhere a ghost was still aiming. How do you kill something that no longer exists? The question haunted Washington, though no one ever spoke it out loud. Officially, Project Avatar was terminated, budgets reabsorbed, files shredded, digital trails overwritten by newer, shinier programs that promised more control and fewer headlines. But whispers don't burn, they just change direction. In the months after the Syrian explosion, a series of strange incidents rippled across military networks. Servers wiped clean. Research labs emptied overnight. Key figures vanished. Some retired quietly, others never made it home. No one claimed responsibility. But if you listened closely, between the hum of surveillance chatter and the silence of classified briefings, a name kept surfacing, a code name, more myth than person. Ghost 7. The woman who shouldn't have survived. The weapon who refused to be one. The ghost who wouldn't die. Somewhere far from Washington's marble walls, deep in the Caucasus Mountains, a convoy crawled through fog. 3 armored vehicles, unmarked, carrying men who thought they owned the world because they held the right contracts. Inside the lead vehicle, a man in a suit scrolled through encrypted files on his tablet. Project Rebirth, the folder read. Beneath it, a familiar name, Avatar. He smiled to himself. Can't kill an idea, he murmured. A moment later, the windshield cracked. The sniper round hit dead center. The bullet didn't explode or fragment. It simply pierced the glass, the man, and the world he thought was untouchable. The convoy screeched to a halt. Soldiers scrambled from the rear trucks, rifles raised, scanning the ridgelines. The fog swallowed sound, light, and reason. They fired blindly into the mist, shouting commands no one heard. Then silence. A single radio crackled. A voice calm, female, familiar. 4,000 meters. The line went dead. When the fog cleared, the ridge was empty. No shooter, no trace. Just a small metal tag hanging from a jagged rock, its engraving half burned, half new. RM. They didn't report it. They didn't have to. Whoever was pulling the strings got the message. Some things you can bury. Some things bury you back. In another part of the world, Jake Morrison walked along a quiet pier in Istanbul. The sea was dark and still, the air heavy with salt and memory. He carried no gun now, just a small duffel and the notebook that had become his map to the truth. He'd been following threads for months, dead leads, coded signals, whispers of movement. Every path led nowhere. Every rumor ended with silence. But he couldn't stop. Not because he wanted revenge, because he wanted meaning. A seagull shrieked overhead. He looked up, squinting against the pale sunrise. The light reflected off the water, gold and blue and endless. It reminded him of the desert, of fire, of her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out her dog tag. He still wore his own, though it meant nothing now. He pressed them together, metal to metal, ghost to ghost. I don't know if you're out there, he murmured, but if you are, thank you. A woman's voice behind him said, you never were good at letting go. Jake froze. He turned slowly. She stood a few yards away, hood up, coat long, face half hidden by shadow. The hair was shorter now, the eyes softer but unmistakable. Riley Matthews. Alive. For a moment, neither spoke. The sea moved between them, quiet and vast. Jake's voice cracked. You died. Riley smiled faintly. I got better. He took a step closer. How? I didn't plan to, she said softly. The fire hit the serum in my system, burned it out, but it kept me breathing, long enough for the collapse to finish the job. Jake frowned. You're telling me you walked out of a burning underground lab? Riley shrugged slightly, crawled mostly. He almost laughed, but it caught in his throat. Why didn't you come back? Because the world you're in doesn't need me anymore, she said. It needs proof that what they did can't be repeated, and ghosts don't give interviews. Jake looked down, jaw tight. You could have told me. She stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. If I had, would you have stopped looking? He didn't answer. Her hand brushed against the railing. The morning wind tugged at her hair, revealing faint burned scars along her temple. She didn't hide them. You found what you needed to find, she said quietly. Now let it rest. They're still rebuilding the program, Jake said. Different names, same people. You think they'll stop because one base burned down? Riley's gaze met his, calm, unblinking. They'll stop because they're afraid. And if they're not, I'll remind them why they should be. Jake's eyes softened. And when you run out of people to remind? Riley looked toward the horizon. Then I'll stop running. They stood there a long time, two soldiers who'd forgotten what peace felt like. Finally, Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out the notebook. He tore out a page, a map of the last lead he'd chased, and handed it to her. If you're going to keep fighting, you shouldn't do it alone. She hesitated, then took it. Neither should you. He smiled faintly. You still don't take orders well. Never did, she said, smiling back. The sound of the sea filled the silence between them. For the first time in years, It wasn't empty. When she turned to leave, he said softly, "Riley." She stopped. "What are you now, if not a soldier, if not a weapon?" She glanced back over her shoulder. Her eyes caught the sunlight, green, steady, human. "Just a witness," she said. Then she was gone. Weeks later, a file arrived anonymously on a reporter's desk in London. No return address, no sender ID. Inside, a data drive and a single sheet of paper with one line typed across it. Every war begins with a secret and ends with someone brave enough to tell it. The drive contained everything: documents, mission logs, recordings, proof of the Ghost program, the experiments, the deaths, proof that soldiers had been turned into something less than human in the name of security. The story went global within hours. The government denied it, the agencies deflected, but the evidence was overwhelming. Hearings followed, investigations, whistleblowers came forward. And one phrase kept repeating in every leaked message, every classified transcript: Ghost 7. She'd become a myth, a ghost that carried the truth where laws could not. In the end, no one ever saw Riley again. Some said she disappeared in South America. Others swore she'd been seen in Kiev, helping extract prisoners from a secret base. A few claimed she'd joined monks in the Himalayas, a ghost finding peace in silence. Jake didn't chase her anymore. He didn't have to. Some connections don't need distance.